r/NoSleep. Posted by you/last, username sucked02. Don't point out the reflection's mistake. I've never liked mirrors. They've always given me a weird feeling and I've always avoided them as much as I could. It's always given me the uncanny valley feeling, like it's not really me that I'm looking at. I've recently moved out of my parents' house and into a flat of my own. It's just me and my cat. Living alone has been interesting. I get scared a lot by the little things. A creak in the hallway can no longer be explained away as a sound my sister made coming back from the bathroom or my father having a cup of tea before going back to bed. I've gotten off track. What I meant to say is that I get scared sometimes partially, because I live alone and I wanted to get over it, because I am sick of losing sleep over something childish. So I looked online and found that exposure can actually help in getting over a fear. Well, I can't expose myself to noises, but I thought that if I could start by easing one of my other fears then I would be less scared overall. I made myself slow down my morning and evening routine. I spent more time in front of a mirror. Acted as if my face had become the most interesting thing to look at. And it worked a little. I didn't lose my fear immediately, but I did stop rushing in the morning just to get out of the bathroom. It went so well that I started to smile at myself in the mirror. I've always found smiling in the mirror the creepiest part. It just never felt real to me. Like there was someone or something on the other side mocking me, not really knowing what actual happiness feels like and just trying to copy it to the best of their ability. It feels fake. It doesn't look the same as it would on a photograph. So that's what became my new routine. Brushing my hair, brushing my teeth, washing my face and smiling at the mirror before leaving the bathroom and going about my day. It took a week of me doing this before I spotted something. The smile on my mirror dropped a little after I had dropped mine. Just a fraction of a second later, but I could have sworn that I saw it. I freaked out internally, but I told myself that it was just my imagination. So I shook my head and tried again. Everything was normal this time, not even a millisecond of delay, but the uneasy feeling did not go away. I didn't immediately leave the bathroom. It might sound stupid, but I didn't want to tip the thing off that I had seen anything wrong, so I went about my routine as normal. And I did the same before going to bed. This smile was normal as well. I didn't sleep well that night. Nothing abnormal happened for 2 full days. 4 times of me looking in the mirror and nothing out of the ordinary happened, but on the 3rd day something did. It was too fast this time. Its smile forming just a fraction of a second before mine did. Its dimples appearing just a smidge before mine would. I dropped my smile and it dropped its smile too. I kept looking at myself in the mirror, hoping to spot another imperfection, but I didn't find any. But I wasn't done yet. I was sure of it by then. I felt vindicated in a way. That feeling that I've had since I was a child was correct. There is something wrong with my reflection. I called a friend of mine that same afternoon. I'd already told him that I was going to try to get over my fear, but I hadn't told him about my progress. He didn't believe me. I told him to try and see for himself. Start smiling at his own reflection and actually look at it. He laughed at me, but he told me that he would humor me, seeing as it's not something that would take him just a few seconds every day. He laughed at me the first week. So much that I felt like an idiot. I started questioning what I saw, and by week 2 I was fully convinced that he was right to laugh at me. Your own mind can be the best gaslighter there is. I had myself convinced that I didn't see anything. I started coming up with all kinds of excuses and convinced myself that I must not have gotten enough sleep beforehand and that I was just seeing things. Though I never managed to convince myself to smile at my reflection after it. I stopped any and all fear exposure. I don't smile in mirrors anymore and spent the least amount of time as is humanly possible in my bathroom. My sleep schedule is still horrible and I don't get a wink of sleep sometimes when it's windy outside and the house makes creepy noises, but things had overall been getting better. That was until my friend, Tim, called me. He's seen it too. It wasn't his smile for him, but a movement. He moved his head to the left one time, but his reflection hesitated. It wasn't long and you would never notice it, you weren't paying attention, but it was something. Tim can be a little bit arrogant at times. So while most people would doubt themselves or question if they really saw what they did, Tim decided to question his reflection. "What are you?" he asked. It did not answer. The reflection matched his every movement while asking it. "What are you?" He asked it a second time. And again the reflection matched him syllable by syllable, but it didn't answer. He didn't ask a third time, but he did try to get an answer out of it. He tried tapping the mirror, moving quickly to try and catch it in a mistake again. He tried closing one eye. Nothing weird happened. The mirror matched his every move. He became frustrated. So he did something that I cannot recommend anyone to do. He confronted it. "You've made a mistake," you hesitated. "I know what I saw," he told the reflection. The reflection didn't do anything drastic. It still moved in all the same ways Tim himself did while he told the mirror this, but the eyes did change. Tim told me that they didn't look like his eyes. There was too much hatred in them. That's when he left his house. He came over to talk to me, tell me that I was right. He told me everything that happened. We were talking about what it could be and what to do about it when we heard it. The sound of glass shattering in my bathroom. It's been about 10 minutes since then. We've locked ourselves in my room. I could have sworn that I heard footsteps earlier, but I'm too afraid to ask Tim if he heard it too. I'm too scared to open my door, but I don't know what to do. I thought reaching out to people who have experience with the supernatural might be a good idea. I was hoping someone might have experienced something similar and might be able to help. Any advice is welcome. We just want to survive. Next story of this video. Posted by UAT Markov. Nothing's been the same since the crash. I, 38M, am the janitor for an elementary school just down the road. I love my job. I take pride in making the school look great for the start of every class day, and all the kids smile and wave and call me Mr. Janitor, despite my name tag, as they walk by in their neat little lines. At least, everything was great, until the crash. One morning, 7 o'clock sharp as always, I was turning out of my driveway to hurry to the school. But just as I did, a car came speeding over the hill to my left, and struck my car. Once I woke up in the hospital, something didn't feel right. It was oddly quiet. A nurse came in shortly after, but she seemed distant. All of her movements seemed slow, as if we were both underwater. She unhooked me from all the machines, which I noticed hadn't been making any noise, and handed me back my clothes. The hospital provided me a bus home, which was nice, since I knew my car would be totaled, and I knew I'd never afford a new one. Once I was home, things felt a bit more cozy. I still felt a little cold and dizzy, but assumed it was whatever painkillers they'd had me on. The next morning, I figured I'd just walk to work. It was only 10 meters or so up the road, so I'd just have to plan for it. I woke up the next morning, half an hour earlier than usual. In a bit of a daze, I changed into my uniform, and set off toward the school. It was strangely quiet, and I finally noticed why. No birds were chirping. The sky was a steely gray, as it had been the day before. Once I was at work, I was scarcely noticed. The kids would occasionally glance up at me, but almost never waved or smiled. For most of the adults, it was as if I wasn't there. Strangely, this felt right. I kept up my mopping until lunchtime, and retired to my closet. I glanced at my reflection in the shiny chrome of the boiler, and noticed I was unusually pale. I shrugged it off, and ate my cold tuna sandwich. The next day was more of the same, but I noticed the cold grayness of the weather seemed to make its way indoors. Walking through the brightly colored hallways, all I saw were dull tones. It was as if the color had been sucked out. On the way to my closet for lunch, I took a painting off the wall of the second-grade hallway, which had used to be a bright watercolor of a rose. I hung it up in my closet, irrationally hoping to save away some of the world's color. In doing so, I thought to put 2 fingers to my wrist, and checked my pulse. Nothing. I tried again. No beat. I tried my throat, nothing noticeable. My skin was cool to the touch, and paler than the day before. I considered calling my doctor, but the world outside felt distant, almost imaginary. I went back to mopping, noticing that the students stared into the ground as they walked by, or straight through me as if I didn't exist. The worst part was that I started noticing shadowy figures when I turned quickly. I would see a blip of cloudy darkness when I slowly turned around, and if I rounded a corner too sharply, I'd sometimes see an indistinguishable dark mass somewhere in the distance. Some nights later, I started having nightmares, which was uncharacteristic of my normal, calm sleep. Sometimes in the dreams I was at work, and one of the little children would look up at me, and its eyes would be dark sockets. Sometimes I would be standing far above the school, looking down into fog, and slowly plummet. Sometimes a car would come up the hill just as I checked my mail, and veer off the road toward me. As the days went on, the clouds stayed gray, and the outside got foggy. Sounds continued to get more muffled, and my thoughts and movements continued slowing. It was as if I was a character in a play, and submerged in a lake, all at once. My skin was clammy and gray, and nobody noticed my existence. The dark figures kept getting sharper, sometimes appearing just behind me in my dreams, which had become third person. I could start to make out a hooded individual, cloaked in shadow, staring at me. I almost took comfort in it, the only being that could still recognize my existence. I felt cold all the time, but no blankets or warm clothes helped. As the days ran on, and the world slowly faded, the only thing that grew clearer was the figure. He was braver now, standing just out of sight, around corners and objects. I knew I should be scared of him, but I could hardly feel anything, let alone fear. Finally, one quiet day, as I walked the halls with my mop, it showed itself. I stared into its hollow eyes, willing it to do whatever it was fated to. It held out its hand, as if for me to shake it. Suddenly, for the first time in weeks, I flashed back to my old life. I saw color again, saw smiles, and outside, saw green foliage and a blue sky. I wasn't ready. I shook my head. As if in recognition, the figure bowed its head. I felt the world go black around me. I woke up, once again in a hospital bed. This time, when the nurse walked in, she was animated and talkative. I was surrounded by little noises, the beeping of my pulse, the chirping of birds, footsteps in the hallway. Once I was released, I saw green and red and orange autumn leaves, and the next morning, I showed up to work again to cheers and waves and welcomes back. I don't know where I was for those few weeks. I thought it was a dream, at first. But in my janitor's closet, just behind the vacuum cleaner, hung a faded, darkened watercolor, a watercolor of a rose against a gray sky, splotchy and wilting.